What if I told you there's a place on Earth where you can stand today and look across the water to see tomorrow? Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Actually see the next day with your own eyes. 2 islands separated by less than 3 miles of freezing ocean. So close you could almost swim between them. But here's what makes them extraordinary. One island is living in today. The other is already in tomorrow. Same ocean, same sky, but a 21-hour time difference. This isn't science fiction. This is the international date line cutting through the Bering Strait, creating one of the strangest geographical anomalies on the planet. On one side, the United States. On the other, Russia. Between them, the invisible line where time itself splits apart. Today, you're about to discover the story of these 2 islands.
You're watching Wayterra, your gateway to the most mysterious places on Earth. And if you are new, please subscribe as we keep exploring every day.
Where neighbors are separated not just by distance, but by an entire day. The 2 islands we're talking about are the Diomede Islands, sitting in the middle of the Bering Strait between Alaska and Siberia. Big Diomede belongs to Russia. Little Diomede belongs to the United States. The distance between them, just 2.4 miles. On a clear day, you can see one island from the other with your naked eye. But despite being so close, they exist in completely different days. Big Diomede is 21 hours ahead of Little Diomede. When it's noon on Monday in Little Diomede, it's 9 a.m. on Tuesday in Big Diomede. This bizarre situation exists because the international date line, the imaginary line where one calendar day becomes the next, runs directly between the 2 islands. Cross that line heading west and you jump forward a day. Cross it heading east and you go back in time. The Diomede Islands didn't choose this fate. Geography and politics decided it for them. For thousands of years, indigenous Inuit people lived on both islands, moving freely between them. They were one community, one family. But in 1867, everything changed. The United States purchased Alaska from Russia, and the border was drawn right through the Bering Strait, splitting the islands, splitting families, and eventually splitting time itself. Today, these 2 tiny pieces of rock represent more than just geography. They're a symbol of how arbitrary lines on a map can divide people who were once inseparable. Little Diomede, the American island, is home to roughly 80 to 110 people, mostly indigenous Inupiat who have lived here for generations. There are no hotels, no restaurants, no paved roads. Just a small cluster of wooden houses clinging to the rocky slopes, connected by wooden boardwalks and steep paths. Life here is brutally harsh. Winters bring temperatures that plunge far below zero. Howling winds rip across the island with nothing to stop them. For months, the sun barely rises above the horizon, leaving the community in near constant darkness. The only way in or out is by helicopter or small plane, and only when weather permits. Supplies arrive sporadically. Medical emergencies require evacuation to the mainland, hours away. Yet the people of Little Diomede have survived here for centuries, hunting seals and walrus, fishing in the icy waters, and maintaining traditions passed down through generations. Across the water, Big Diomede tells a different story. Once home to a thriving Inupiat community, the island was forcibly evacuated by the Soviet government in the 1940s during World War II. The residents were relocated to mainland Siberia, and the island was turned into a military outpost. Today, Big Diomede is inhabited only by Russian border guards and military personnel. No civilians live there, no families, just rotating shifts of soldiers monitoring one of the most isolated borders on Earth. The 2 islands, once united by culture and family, are now separated by more than just time. They're separated by politics, military presence, and decades of Cold War tension that still lingers today. Standing on Little Diomede and looking west toward Big Diomede isn't just looking at another country. You're literally looking into tomorrow. If it's Sunday afternoon on the American island, the Russian island is already deep into Monday. The sun has already risen there on a day that hasn't even started for you yet. This creates some fascinating paradoxes. Technically, you could celebrate New Year's Eve on Little Diomede, then travel across to Big Diomede and celebrate it again. Except you can't, because the border is completely closed. During the Cold War, this narrow stretch of water earned a nickname, the Ice Curtain. Families that had lived together for generations were suddenly cut off from each other. Brothers and sisters separated by less than 3 miles couldn't visit, couldn't call, couldn't even wave across the water without raising suspicion. Soviet guards patrolled Big Diomede with orders to shoot anyone attempting to cross. The waters between the islands became a militarized zone, monitored constantly. Even today, decades after the Cold War ended, the border remains sealed. No one from Little Diomede can legally travel to Big Diomede. Russian military presence ensures that the island stays off-limits to civilians, even Russian civilians. The international dateline may be invisible, but the divide it represents here is very, very real. So why does the international dateline run between these two islands in the first place? The concept is actually straightforward, even if the reality is bizarre. The Earth rotates 360 degrees every 24 hours, which means we're divided into 24 time zones, one for each hour of the day. As you travel east or west, time shifts forward or backward by 1 hour per zone. But here's the problem. If you kept traveling in one direction around the globe, you'd eventually end up where you started, yet somehow be a full day ahead or behind. The solution? Create a line where the calendar officially changes. That line is the international dateline. It runs roughly along the 180th meridian in the Pacific Ocean, chosen specifically because it passes through mostly open water, with very few inhabited islands. But it's not a straight line. The international dateline zigzags around countries to avoid splitting nations into different days. It bends around Fiji, Tonga, and Kiribati to keep them unified. But when it reaches the Bering Strait, there's no avoiding it. The line cuts right between the Diomede Islands because the US-Russia border follows it. One island had to be in one day and the other in the next. Geography became destiny, and so these two tiny islands, closer to each other than most neighbors, exist in different days, permanently out of sync, forever separated by an invisible line that governs time itself. For now, the Diomede Islands remain largely untouched by modern development. But that could change. Climate change is already reshaping the Arctic. Sea ice that once formed thick barriers between the islands is melting earlier and freezing later each year. For the people of Little Diomede, this is both a blessing and a curse. Less ice means easier access by boat during summer months, making supply deliveries more reliable. But it also means their traditional hunting grounds are disappearing, forcing marine animals to migrate farther north. The permafrost beneath their homes is thawing, causing buildings to shift and crack. Coastal erosion threatens the limited land they have. On Big Diomede, Russia has been quietly expanding its military infrastructure. New radar installations, upgraded facilities, increased patrols, all part of a broader strategy to assert control over Arctic territories as shipping routes open up due to melting ice. Some experts warn that increased militarization could turn this already tense border into a flashpoint. And then there's the question of tourism. As remote travel becomes more accessible, adventure seekers are expressing interest in visiting Little Diomede. The chance to stand at the edge of tomorrow is too tempting for some to resist. But the island's infrastructure can barely support its current population. An influx of tourists could overwhelm resources, disrupt traditional ways of life, and damage the fragile Arctic environment. The Diomede Islands have survived in isolation for thousands of years. The question is whether they can survive the attention of the modern world. The Diomede Islands are more than just a geographic curiosity. They represent something deeper about borders, time, and human connection. These islands remind us that the lines we draw on maps, borders, time zones, political boundaries, are human inventions. They're arbitrary decisions that can separate families, divide communities, and reshape entire ways of life. For the indigenous Inupiat people, the international dateline doesn't erase thousands of years of shared history. Their ancestors traveled freely between these islands long before nations and time zones existed. The story of the Diomedes also highlights how geopolitics can turn neighbors into strangers. Two islands visible to each other every single day, yet completely isolated by decisions made thousands of miles away. But perhaps most importantly, these islands are a living example of resilience. Despite the harsh climate, political division, and isolation, the community on Little Diomede continues to thrive. They've maintained their culture, their language, and their traditions against all odds. The Diomede Islands stand as a testament to human endurance, and a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary places on Earth are the ones we can see but never touch. Somewhere in the Bering Strait, two islands sit less than 3 miles apart. One lives in today, the other in tomorrow. They share the same sky, the same ocean, the same bitter cold. but they exist in different days, separated by an invisible line that governs time itself. The Diomede Islands are proof that our world is stranger than we think, that time, borders, and distance don't always mean what we expect them to, and that sometimes tomorrow is closer than you think. You just can't reach it. If you enjoyed learning about these incredible islands, hit the like button and subscribe for more fascinating geography stories. Which place should I cover next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.